To record. Good.
Recording.
Okay, we're good.
Let me a little bit speaking. I call this policy committee meeting of May 5th, 2023 to order. Good morning, everyone. Morning. Thanks for being with us. Just saying, would you please call the roll?
Mr. D. Voting.
President.
Mitch K.
Here.
Connor.
Here.
Casper.
Here.
Mr. Vogelman
Here.
and Mr. Zinger.
Did we bring up, stand up just a little bit more to Mr. Goldman? Thank you. Order move number 2, approve the agenda. I have a motion. So moved. Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mrs. Casper. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes.
Ms. Bodie. Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Vogelman.
Yes.
Mr. Zink, yes.
We'll move to number 3, approve the minutes of February 10th, 2023 meeting. I have a motion. So moved. Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer. Second. Thank you, Mrs. Casper. Call the roll.
Ms. Schaefer.
Yes.
Ms. Casper.
Yes.
Ms. Bodie.
Yes.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Vogelman
Yes.
and Mr. Zink, yes.
Move to number 4, policy updates and topics, starting with the packet that we received on Monday evening. Mr. Vogelman, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. And if there's any issues, just let me know. It's a little garbled on my end, just because I think it's such a big room trying to capture all the noises at once. So just stop me if you can't hear anything, or if I have trouble hearing, I'll ask for clarification. But I basically gave you a packet into 3 different sections. And so I thought we'd go section by section and then kind of walk you through each section. And then at the end, stapled to your agenda was the motion from the previous board meeting that we would discuss in policy. So if you want to go with the first section, that is the larger clasp of policies. These are 15 separate policies in this first clasp that we'll go through. If I'll give you time to get that one back out front, and then I'll go, each one of these are stapled, so we'll just go staple by staple and we'll work our way through it. And if there's any questions, just stop me and we'll figure it out from there. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yep.
Okay, so in that packet, the first staple thing you come to, that's just the general overview. So it just kind of gives you an overview of all of the policies that are included in this set. So there's really nothing to go over on that. Then you will come to our first policy, which is 0131.1, technical corrections. Is everybody with me so far?
Good to go, Rob.
Hey, we're 2 for 2. Okay. On this policy, this is a policy that is revised. It just provides flexibility for technical corrections. What this policy means is, like, if we change, for example, Title IX coordinator name or hearing officer name, that can be done in one board meeting. You don't have to do a first read and a second read. When it's just technical corrections, this allows you to just do one read. Any problems with this policy? And that's just for technical corrections.
Are there questions?
I am skeptical of this policy. Why are we bringing this policy about? And do you know whose idea was this? Is this the state? I know, is it Neola, but did they get that from the state, or where do they get the direction from this policy?
I would have to ask Norm that. I have no idea, because it just explained to me this is just a technical correction. I can try and look here real quick in the packet, see what it says in the packet for this first policy. Technical corrections revised. It says recognizes limited circumstance when the Board of Education may circumvent regular policy adoption procedures to make minor corrections to policies, because
Yeah,
boards
I
not
read
follow.
that already.
Okay, that would be the only thing I have.
Okay, well, I just feel like there's something more to this. So I guess I'll just have to do my own research on that one then. Thank you.
We need to make sure we're speaking up so Rob can hear us really well.
The mic-
That's fine.
Okay, but let's make sure we're really speaking up. Rob, did you have anything else to offer on
No.
0131.1?
No, ma'am.
Any further questions, Mrs. Bowman?
Nope.
Continue, Rob, thanks.
Okay, then we go on to your next page, should be policy 2114, meeting state performance indicators. This is just back when House Bill 82 a couple years ago changed the school's performance and accountability system, going from, instead of using A to F, going to a 1 to 5 stars. It's just now we are in full implementation of that. This revision reflects current status of state performance ratings. It's just an update. Instead of the A to F, it's just now going the 5-star rating, which we're currently using.
Any questions? Okay,
The next one, policy 2271, College Credit Plus program. This provides that there's just some language cleanup, but the biggest part is on the last page of the addition of children of military families. This just means that if a child is part of a military family and part of College Credit Plus, what we've done in the past is if someone withdraws from a College Credit Plus course before they complete it, they have to pay for that class. But if it's a military family and they have to move due to being displaced or transport, I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but reassigned to another location, it's without penalty, that we would not penalize that family because of that situation. So it's just an added clause for College Credit Plus that if kids withdraw early, they have to pay for the course unless it's a military family.
I'm concerned about many of these new policies where they're designed to eliminate the pronouns of he and she.
really,
Yep, really.
it says students, that's our work.
Well, there seems to be a pattern that they are taking away his and her and replacing with students or superintendent, and that concerns me.
Well, some of them, in some of these policies, as you read them previously, it was unclear if they were talking about an administrator, if they were talking about a student, whom the he and she were referring to. So as I read through these, I felt like that made the policies more specific and clear as to who they were speaking of and who was responsible for that change and who it impacted.
I believe there's nefarious reasons for changing this to and taking out the pronouns his and her.
Okay, noted.
Rob, did you have any comments?
Nope.
Okay,
All right, next one, moving on to should be 2412 Homebound Instruction Program. This is just clarifying language about home instruction. It's 1 hour of home instruction for every school day with additional language to prevent more time on a case-by-case basis if students are on IEPs. Just instead of, it would just say 5 hours per week. It's really an hour per day. That's where they get the 5 hours per week. So it's just clarifying in case a student isn't out for an entire week, it's an hour per day. It just helps on that cleanup. So if someone's out for 3 days, they get 3 hours of home instruction, not 5.
thank you.
Again, they are just deleting or taking away the pronouns his and her and replacing with their. This question wasn't really, it's not part of the change, but it just made me question on this one. It says that they must meet to amend it, but if somebody's just had an accident or has a severe illness, it made me question, how do we implement this if they're unable to meet? Because I would think there'd be situations where it would be too chaotic to meet, so.
Well, they're referring to the IEP team.
Right, but it says it has to meet to get that home instruction, and I don't know, it just can the team meet without the family, I guess?
Or can the family participate electronically or by
Yes.
phone?
Yes. Yep.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I know that wasn't part of the change, but it just was a question that
Yeah,
arose as I was
so-
reviewing the policy.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, Rob.
All right. Now, I'm going to take a look at the next 3 together because you'll notice the next one you come up on is 3120.09, but it's all crossed off because this is going to be rescinded. Along with the next one you come across is policy 4120.09, which is all rescinded. And then you get to the third one in this packet, which is 8120, which is volunteers. basically what Neil has done is they've looked at this and said, okay, well, wait a minute, we don't have certified volunteers or classified volunteers. So there's no reason to have a volunteers section in the 3,000s or the 4,000s, but we should put it in the 8,000s where it's more about operations, because your volunteers are not going to be certified or classified staff. So they basically took these two policies in 312009 and 412009, which are identical policies, and they just collapsed them into one policy into 8120. So you'll be looking at rescinding the 3120 and the 4120 and accepting them in the 8120, which is basically, since they're not considered employees of the district, removing it from the 3,000, 4,000s. They've also added new language about requirements for volunteers who participate in athletics, because, as you know, teaching and non-teaching employees who receive supplemental contracts and stipends are allowed to supervise in extracurricular activities, and they're covered in other policies, but this is just for volunteers. So trying to make sure also get volunteers covered with athletics as far as having their pupil permit pass. But then everything else is similar to the volunteers. If you look down through the policy as it was in the 3,000s and 4,000s, just put into a different place now.
And again, they are removing the pronouns he and she.
Rob, I note that they say under volunteers for athletic activities that they'll be required to do a background check. Does it say that for all of our volunteers?
Correct.
Okay,
It says, right? Yeah, exactly.
that's what I was going to look at.
Yeah. That you have to tell that.
I appreciated the guidance on this one, that from OHSAA, that all of our even volunteer coaches need to still be certified as coaches in order to
Correct.
participate with athletics. I
it.
thought that training would be useful.
Correct.
It does in the second page where the paragraph starting with furthermore.
Yeah, that's what I looked, I had to read it twice, so I found just make sure that was in there.
It faces it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
In athletics. Okay, Rob, I think we're ready to go on unless there are further comments.
Okay. No, I don't have any other comments.
Okay,
All right. Next policy you should have, take a pause here and make sure we're on the same page, is 5310, health screenings and notification. Everyone good?
yes,
Okay, good. All right, for this one, basically the update is on the second page. This is talking about, this has been in place for a while, about concussions. If we believe a student has suffered a concussion, just kind of clarifies who is responsible to make sure that the student is removed. And then also in letter A, before it was you had to have clearance from a doctor, but now they've kind of expanded that, knowing that it's not real easy to get into a doctor these days. But there are other healthcare professionals. If it's a professional licensing agency, then that will count instead of having to get to a doctor. So it just gives families a little more flexibility on getting clearance from a medical facility versus a doctor.
I would also like to note that using the language licensed healthcare professional versus a healthcare provider, that is taking out holistic doctors and naturalistic doctors for people who use those. And so it's saying that you have to have a licensed healthcare professional.
Yes.
So those who use holistic doctors and naturalistic doctors are basically not able to go to their normal doctor, and they have to go to a licensed healthcare professional.
Yes.
But the holistic doctor and a naturalistic doctor can do the same thing.
Would they have any type of license? I'm just not familiar with the type of doctor.
And nothing that
I know a lot of people do have
is
some type
considered
of
a
license.
healthcare license, but they do have other licensing that they go through, but it's not going to be considered. I looked up the language and it is not considered licensed healthcare professional.
is this a liability insurance issue, Rob? That we would require that?
It's just stating that we're following through on Ohio Revised Code that says we're just not going to take somebody's word for it. It has to meet. If you look at letter A on the second page, it says a licensed healthcare professional, each of whom must meet the minimum educational requirements established by rules adopted under Revised Code 3707.521 by the professionals licensing agency. So it's just making sure we're following Ohio Revised Code requirements for these students to come back and participate if they have suffered a concussion.
Thank you. Any other
I
questions
think
on
we
that?
should give the parents the option to choose their healthcare professional.
We're gonna follow Ohio Revised Code for the safety of our students.
Any further comments? Please go ahead, Rob, 5460.
Yes, graduation requirements. As you know, these graduation requirements have been changing over the past couple of years, keeping up with end of course exams, passing all the requirements, tests. And so in our old policy, we had terms such as for the class of 2023 and beyond. Well, we're here now. So we hope to remain more stable in these graduation requirements. And so it's changing the policy to make sure we're not looking down the road. It's what's current, and it also includes some alternatives to demonstrate competency for students who have not passed the English language arts or algebra test, as well as a comprehensive list of state and local seals that are available for students to show readiness for graduation. This just reflects the current Ohio law that we're currently following, and it's a update and getting rid of the old language about credit requirements that are no longer applicable to our students since we're in the year 2023 now.
It really feels to me that we're lowering the expectations for graduation.
I was about to say something. Would you be recognized before you speak out, please? Go ahead.
I just did it. Did you hear what I said?
Would you say it again, please?
I really feel that we're lowering the graduation requirements for our students, and this is very concerning when we are already struggling as a district in preparing our students to be successful and once they graduate. And I'm concerned about this new requirements for graduation.
So Rob, this is an update following the basic requirements that were set by the state.
Correct. This is an ODE language for graduation.
It's that higher requirements for graduation.
Would the board like to have further discussion?
I don't believe our students are struggling though.
I don't know where you live.
I live in a more positive environment than you do. You don't want to start with me today, Darby, you really don't.
Let's get the comments focused, please. Let's go. Rob, 5610.
All right, 5610, removal, suspension, expulsion of students. What this does is this is just updating some language about students that are coming to us from outside the district, that they have some rules to follow, but also it is once again, it's similar to the previous policy that when we hit the year 2023, there was rules in place about no suspensions or expulsions for students in grades pre-K through 3. That is now in full implementation. It's not we were rolling into it. You were supposed to be reducing that number over the past couple of years, but now it's in place that those students cannot be suspended or expelled except for as permitted by law, what's in there. And it's just also some just language updates throughout as well.
You also
Comments?
they are also removing his and her pronouns in this policy, and it is unnecessary.
We're waiting for you.
I'm looking at my board document box. Thank you. Go ahead.
Any further comments?
I'm just gonna say, guess that we're removing his and her from all of the policies going forward, so just FYI, you probably don't have to mention it each time.
Well,
That is the recommend.
Thank you.
It is the recommendation. Anything further on that?
Just because it's a recommendation does not mean we have to do it. And if you would have read the very beginning of this, it says that we do not have to follow Neola's suggestions, then you would know that we do not.
I know we do not. I
So
just
this
choose
is a
to.
discussion. We are not voting on it this evening.
And I'm
or this
discussing it.
afternoon.
Thank you so much, Ms. Linda.
Thank you, Ms. Bodie. Ellie, you were saying anything else?
I was just saying that we have Neola and for a reason, and Rob spends a lot of time going through these policies
It doesn't mean that we
and that it's, you
not
know,
discuss
I
things
would
that
rather
could be
be
approved.
speaking. It would fall to the experts and the people that have done the research.
Aren't we supposed to be experts?
Is there any further discussion or comments on 5610?
For board members, we should know what we're doing, Ms. Kelly.
Let's keep our comments focused on the work in front of us. We have a full day. of
This is the
meetings.
work in front of us.
Your personal comments are not necessary. Mrs.
We
Schaefer?
should know what we're doing.
This-
This also speaks to in Neola that if we do choose to change from what Neola has stated, that then they are no longer responsible for vetting this or the legal implications of that decision.
It
And
does
we
say run it by
become-
legal.
Then it says we
Schaefer speaking.
become responsible and have to have our own legal and would also have to defend ourselves with our own legal should it become an issue down the road,
That is correct.
which exposes us to additional liability, does it not?
That's correct.
Well, I think the
That's
word,
correct.
the risk is worth it when we're fighting for our students.
Understood.
Thank you.
Do you have something? Thank you, Rob. Anything further on that?
No.
Let's move to 6325, please.
Okay, this one is very short. It's a procurement of federal funds and grants. It's just a change, and you see it in the third paragraph there. It was all, but now they've changed it to just say when required by federal program legislation. So it doesn't have to be for all federally funded contracts, just when required by federal legislation.
Is that a reduction in paperwork?
You have to ask Adam.
Hopefully.
But yeah, typically it would be.
Anything on 6325? Move on to 8390.
8390 animals on district policy. We had this covered in our AG 9160. But since a lot of other school districts are also going with more and more therapy animals and also increase in number of students that require service animals, Neola went ahead and moved it over into a policy for us. And so that's why we have policy 8390 before us. So it just covers the responsibilities of when we have animals on district policy. It's very similar to, like I said, our AG 9160 was. It just talks about clarification on who owns what and who and how things are supposed to be maintained. A lot of it doesn't apply to us too much because our therapy dogs are not Lakota owned. They are not our dogs. They are through a program. And so a lot of this policy would apply if those were our dogs that we owned, but we do not. But it just covers kind of making sure the animals are suitable. If you have kids that are allergic, you remove them, how you take care of them, how you welcome them, how you make sure facilities are cleaned, things of that nature. Once again, very similar to what our AG was. It's just pulled into policy now.
So completely new policy, not a revision.
Correct. And that's why if you look at the code, it says PO 8390 new for Lakota Local School District.
Anything else on that, Rob?
No.
Comments or questions? Move to school safety, 8400.
This has been, this was passed back in House Bill 123 back in 2021. Once again, this is one of those rollout programs that by the year 2023, by March of 2023, you had to have inside each of your buildings, you had to have a emergency management plan, and you also had to have a safety team, a threat assessment team for any buildings that house students 6 through 12. And so thanks to Chris Passarge, we've been working on that with our local law enforcement, that we do have threat assessment teams in place in all of our buildings. So all of our elementaries, our junior highs, and our high schools have a threat assessment team that is in place to follow this new rule that's been a rollout. So we've been working on that for past couple of months, almost a year now, going to trainings, bringing in trainings, working with Butler County Educational Service Center with their safety trainings, making sure that we get our teams in place. So this is just revised, reflecting the update in current policy and law.
Any questions, comments?
These additions and delineations are an effort to expand programs that are already bloated, convoluted, and dubious in nature. This policy is supposedly designed to promote safety, borrows elements from other programs, and even within its own language that constitute combining the institutionalized and wholesale psychoanalysis of SEL with elements of police state, which I might add begs the question, how on earth did anybody even think that this is going to help our children get educated. And personally, I don't think anyone ever did. It funds a new industry that has nothing to do with education, but is nevertheless being force-fed to our school districts and by proxy, the communities that they serve. The goals of these programs are so lofty, so convoluted as to be unintelligible, leaving the real work of the the real work to institute these programs to professionals that were not just employed specifically for educational purposes, but are not suited for anything else. And then school districts, Lakota being one of them, have been so compromised by the misplaced priorities that have given us CRT, SEL, or DIE that they struggle to meet the already lowered performance standards. Lower performance standards that were not so incidentally instituted as a result of prior attempts to make up for the damage caused by these programs in the first place. And then we want to further frustrate the district. I believe that the school board needs to remain focused on educational programs that are proven to graduate students capable of not just taking care of themselves, but their communities, their country, and the world, and we are failing at this miserably. These programs should be instituted at insane asylums or maybe up the street at a local correctional facility, but they have no business in the school district. And I pray that my fellow board members will join me and hit the reset button, reject all these enhancements or additions of these policies and begin the process of reviewing them to either curtail them when possible or find out what we are required to do by law, or get rid of them altogether and get back to education.
Mrs. Bodie, and as I look at this, and thank you for your comment, but as I look at this, I'm seeing emergency management plans, which we're required to do by law. I'm seeing threat assessment, which seems to be a completely appropriate part of a safety program. Emergency management test to make sure that what we have in place actually works on a practical level. I'm seeing multidisciplinary decisions that make sure that everyone is included in the process. At the front, it talks about not just school administrators, that we want our entire staff involved, our administration, our teachers, our support staff, everyone's involved in safety. It talks about risk management options and supports. It talks about a culture of safety, respect, trust, and emotional support. It talks about, for instance, the TIPS program that we use that monitors social media for us. Can you help me understand by pointing me to a specific part of this policy that you have an objection to?
All of these programs are accompanied by vague descriptions and complicated ideas that neither you nor I fully understand, and that is the point. And so, like I just said, we need to get rid of the convoluted stuff in these policies and go to what we need to do by the state, but there's other language in here that is not necessary, and we need to decipher that.
Can you point to that so we have some idea of what you're referring to?
We don't have enough time to do that, but we will make we can definitely go further, and I will investigate more.
One part, any of those things that I mentioned that you would have a concern with. And you're right, safety is complex. It's very complex.
We can discuss this another time. There's too many to list.
Yes,
I would just like to say that I'm okay with safety provisions in here, because in the event of a school shooting, I would like to make sure that we have students left to educate.
But when they're saying that we are reliable, that we can mentally assess past students, and I don't, you didn't even catch that, obviously, by the look on your face.
please point us toward it.
Yeah,
so we know
again,
what you're referring
I'm
to.
telling you
Point us
that
to what's not on your face.
there's something in here that says, I can't, it's 8 pages. I can't remember exactly where I read
Then
that.
look through it. We'll wait.
We're willing to wait. If there's
I'm
something
just willing to
specific
wait to
that
see
you
what
would
my
like
fellow
to
board
refer
members
us
are
to.
concerned about.
I can come back with you. I can come back with more information. We can move on. But there's so much convoluted information in here that no one can understand it, including yourself, obviously.
I would disagree. Saying.
Mrs. Schaefer, anything?
Again, I find it to be fairly straightforward. I appreciate the guidance to create the best plan that we can to keep our students safe, working with our school resource officers and our administrative teams. I think, again, safety should be a top priority. I don't find working with our SROs creating a police state. I prefer to look at it as keeping our students safe.
I agree with your comments about ourselves. I think we're very fortunate that we are able to have them in every building. They're an important part of our team. They truly are. Any further comments? Or Rob, do you have any further comments?
No, I do not.
We'll move on to 8420.
Okay, this is the last one in this first block. The biggest thing on here is that when there are, let me find it here. Not exactly what okay, I'm on the wrong one. Sorry, I'm not on the wrong one. This pertains to school safety. It's just some updated language, basically talking about schools verifying exits and fire drills and making sure precautions are taken in place. And alerting through applicable emergency management plans. You know, you go back to the previous one, we talked about emergency management plans. And so it's updating some of that language from that into here, talking about how many fire drills, and then also keeping those copies and sending them to the correct authorities.
Mrs. Sheila?
I did have a question on the fifth paragraph in this, the one that starts with fire drills or rapid dismissals. And it looks like there's an optional check that I'm wondering if it's a typo, because it says the principal shall verify the school building doors and exits are unlocked during school hours, which seemed counterintuitive.
Yeah, I think that should not be checked.
Okay, so it should be, that's a typo.
Yep. I'll get on Norm for that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm, yeah, as long as it says locked, I'm fine with checking it, but I'm not comfortable checking it with the unlocked.
Correct.
I think we all have the same three questions.
All right, any further questions or comments?
I have another policy in this stack. Rob said that was the last.
No, that's because I was on the wrong one.
Oh, okay.
That's my fault.
So 8462, Rob.
Yes, in January of this year, the governor signed a new requirement that school districts to include age-appropriate training for students on child sex abuse prevention. Staff training is to occur along with other required trainings for topics such as school safety and violence prevention. And so it goes into place starting at the next school year.
I had a mother approach me, and it's interesting that this policy just came up, but I had a mother approach me saying that her child was in kindergarten and she went in Lakota and she went through some sex prevention, what is this called? Sexual abuse training in kindergarten. And she was concerned about that. And I am as well. I feel that maybe we could provide these resources to the parents, but I don't think it's the teacher's job to necessarily provide this training, because these are leading to inappropriate conversations with our students and staff, between students and staff. And this makes me nervous when we're not being transparent in the first place about what our sex education looks like. And now we're talking about, again, things on a sexual nature that is not being transparent, is not the conversations are not transparent enough for our parents and for the board in that matter.
Had you brought this concern to Mr. Wolf? Or had the parent brought that concern to the
No, they
children?
didn't. They did
to the
not want to
building
bring it.
administrator?
It doesn't go right to the board. It should go to the chain of command.
This was a few years ago and she just mentioned it in passing.
Well, I can tell you that should not be happening without communication with the parent in advance. I know that our curriculum department is looking at this, and similar to, I think if everybody's had a child in 4th or 5th grade, you get the letter that comes home telling them that they're going to talk about the birds and the bees coming up, and there's an opt-out form, so they do not have to participate if they wish not to do that. The plan is continue to do the same thing with this policy, but that same paragraph that you look at it, at the very last paragraph on this first page, it says in accordance with the law. And this is where I'll just speak freely. The school district gets put in the middle of a lot of this. Because we are told this is what we have to do. We have to give this training. We have to instruct our staff to notice child prevention for child abuse, for dating violence, for a multitude of things that aren't necessarily related to teaching and learning. They're about the whole student that we are required to do. It seems like more and more of our required trainings coming down from the state are all about the outside influences on a child's life. And so we're in the middle of it.
Of education.
This is good.
I'm not arguing with you on that. I'm just saying this is what continues to come down. That is our requirements per law, per the House bills, per the Senate bills, that we are to now start training on all these areas so that teachers and educators can recognize these different areas in a student's life that happen outside of the school day.
Did you say that was in kindergarten?
Yes.
There's.
Well, I mean,
I don't do that in kindergarten.
well, she told me that that's what happened. Her daughter went to kindergarten, obviously. And one day came home from school and she said, Mom, you'll never guess what they were telling me. So she didn't tell me specifics, but it's so interesting that that happened this week. And then this policy comes out. I am concerned that are we age appropriate? Are we being transparent with what we're giving our students? Because that's really, or transparent with our parents to what we're teaching our students, because I think that's really important. And again, we're overreaching, I believe. And I know this is a state issue, but again, the state and from the policy that I said, or from what I stated earlier, it's overreach, and we're trying to take the job as a parent, as a school district, and that's not our place. So I'm concerned. I mean, not saying that this isn't bad. This is good information to have. We all need to be aware of this, especially I think females with sex trafficking and whatnot. But again, is that the school's job to do this? We're here to educate our students. And again, I consider this overreach. And it obviously this was going to pass, but we need to make sure that as a district, we are transparent and clearly communicate these conversations. We even hand out literature to possibly the parents so they can have these conversations with their students and they can opt out of the training and personally have that conversation with their student versus us when it's really technically not our responsibility.
So I'm going to point out a couple of pieces that I see within this policy in accordance with the law is something that I want to point out first. We'll also provide developmentally appropriate instruction. That's important. I think that goes to the point that you're making. Are we providing developmentally appropriate instruction? This policy would hold us to that. It also talks about the parents and guardians receive the instruction related to this material, that be notified that it's required equipment, required curriculum. They can examine the instructional materials on request, and that a student may be excused from the instruction at the parent's written request. I think that addresses all the issues that you're raising.
We all know that this district is not known for being honest and transparent, and that there are people who are still teaching things in the classroom that are not appropriate.
Then Mrs. Bodie, I would request that you bring that material forward.
Oh, I
our
think that book was just
superintendent and
posted
administration
recently.
and follow up on it.
Was in the classroom.
Any other comments?
Brought out specifically for a topic. Again, you stated that you got this concern this week. Also stated you got it a couple of years ago. I think I said it was her student that was a couple of years ago. I'm happy to tell you that this week.
So
Yes. she
Ms.
did it.
Schaefer has the floor.
Listen, I can't control what God tells people to tell me.
Schaefer has the floor. Julie, please continue.
Again, I think it's imperative that if we all do have concerns, we follow the chain of command and make sure that they get to the appropriate administrator who can handle those situations and not use it as an opportunity to make a different case. So I also appreciate that this instruction is being done in order to follow the law and equip our students with what they need to keep themselves safe.
Kelly?
I don't understand how people
Kelly,
think that the safety of our kids is laughable.
Darby,
It's actually
you do not have the
disgusting.
floor.
It's disgusting. She doesn't care.
Kelly.
I think it's important that you know the next time someone comes to you with some information like that you point them to the proper channels and the chain of command, like Mrs. Schaefer said. The first line of defense is not to call a board member and have them get involved early on, and there are specific reasons for that. That were explained.
Darby, did you have anything else? Nope. Mr. Volderman, anything else on that?
No, but just in relation to that, just to kind of follow up, it is in our policy that if you have a complaint or an issue, you go to the source first, that's 9130, and then you work your way up the chain of command. And it's also in our negotiated agreement with our LSSA and LEA that we would follow that as well.
She did
And
not give
so
me any more information.
He's
Stop trying.
speaking right now, Mrs. Bodie. Please let him finish.
I understand what
Could you
he's
speak just
saying.
a
I
bit
get that.
louder, please.
that's all.
Let's move on. We still have quite a bit to cover. Rob, up
All
next.
right, that should have completed that packet piece. Now, if you move on to your next packet, which I tried to separate by a larger paper clip. So you should have 2 packets remaining, a larger one and a smaller one. The larger one, at the very front of it, it'll say the technology update. So as with the previous one, the first staple page is just an overview about all of the technology updates, which, let's face it, technology continues to change rapidly and daily. When I did go over these sections of 9 policies, Todd Wesley was with me. So our technology team has reviewed these as well and has made the appropriate selections with Neola. So we'll start with the first one, which is 7540. 7540, just as an update in language, because really, as Norm explained it, a lot of these policies, as you see on last revised at the top, have not been revised since 2016. So it is updating the language and clarifying where things are located and who is responsible and what are all the new technology things that have come along that apply. And it's a removal also of some of the older language that no longer apply due to old resources that we used. And so it's just updating the language based on where we're at in the year 2023, and then tie in with the appropriate policies that interweave within the technology world.
I have a question on this. The first green sentence on the second page where it says staff use of district approved social media platforms sites shall be consistent with policy. I just wanted to clarify if that's at all times or just when it's being used in the classroom, because I don't think it states that. And I just was curious how that would impact somebody in their personal time versus their professional time.
It
Right.
also, Rob, doesn't cite specific policy as the other section does there. Was there a missing piece to that line?
No, I don't believe it is. I think it's a general statement because I think it's all policies that deal with technology in which you're acting as an employee of the district. Instead of getting into the specific ones, is that when you basically are operating as though you're wearing your badge at that point on social media, you need to be aware of all the policies. So that's what you say, that's what you link to, that's what you highlight. Make sure you're following FERPA if you're posting pictures of kids, things of that nature that really you're not putting out personal information, you're not releasing data. It's pretty broad, so that's why I think it's left broad.
Anything further? Rob, 7540.01.
Basically, same thing as 7540. If you look at the top, this one has not been revised since 2016 either. And so it's an update of resources and information in the year 2023. Also talking about making sure that people are using the MFA, which is multi-factor authenticity. Forgive me. Yes, that too. And so it's just updating the language similar to the previous one, talking about, we're talking no longer just about voice messages. We're also talking about emails and images and audios and videos now, whereas in 2016, that wasn't that wasn't as much of a concern because that wasn't as readily available. So it's just updating the language, making sure that we're keeping our information private.
Any questions or comments on this one? Seventy-five 40.02.
Sure. This one has various updates throughout. Once again, a lot of it is just updating some language based on who owns the responsibility within this, whether it's a web coordinator or a district officer who oversees this. It's updating that, but it's also talking about prioritizing the need for public entities and websites to be accessible to individuals with disabilities. So it's making sure that that's covered in there, that our web content is accessible for those people that may have some disabilities for seeing or hearing, and then also kind of how we would report possible violations. So it's just an update similar to the other ones, just a little more specific since you're talking about web accessibility.
Confirming with 75-40-02. Is that what we're on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So again, they're taking out his and her gender references. But also I am concerned, it says the board recognizes that such third-party websites may contain advertisements that are not age appropriate versus websites may not contain age appropriate. Never mind, I understand that, sorry. Yeah. I really, and we have blockers that on our technology that tries to prevent most of the inappropriate ads from popping up. Okay. Does the district get notified when those do not work and an ad pops up that's inappropriate?
Mr. Wesley, can you address that question? Did you hear?
I did. Those blockers are based on certain baselines that the blocking company manages. So if it doesn't detect it, you wouldn't be detected, you wouldn't be alerted. We have had those filters in place for 5 years now. As part of that initiative, we rolled out number 1 and not had a single thing that comes to inappropriate content popping up. But we do keep that line open. If any parent, student, teacher, staff sees anything, please let us know. We'll get that addressed right.
All right, thank you.
On the last paragraph on the second page, in order for students' schoolwork to be displayed on the board's website, the student or a parent, if they're minor, must provide written permission and expressly license its display without cost to the board. So does that mean if Lauren or Betsy are walking through a school and takes a picture of, what the first graders did when they did an art project, that we have to get permission for them to post those websites or post those pictures?
I'll have to do some follow-up on that one to check that one. Because
So
I know
I guess I would just appreciate, I'm sorry, I didn't get that to you ahead of time. I would appreciate some clarification just on how that is actually going to work in practicality. And I'd hate to see us unable to display our students' work with our communications department.
Sure. Good catch.
According to the past superintendent, we're not supposed to be taking pictures of children and posting them.
We're not, I'm speaking of our communications department. If you were this.
This is Jasper.
I interpreted that to be any kind of big project that we're putting on the website with a link, and I guess I did not interpret it the way that Mr. Schaefer did, so that's a good question to ask.
So Mr. Vogelman, if you'll provide clarification to the board prior to our first read on this.
Sure.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Let's move on to 75-40.03.
Okay, I'm going to look at this one and the next one at the same time, the 75-40-04, because they both deal with acceptable use and safety. The first one is student acceptable use, and the second one is staff acceptable use. And the changes are fairly identical. That's why we'll kind of take a look at it at the same time. Some of the language is updated, talking about reminder about what a student is responsible for. and also what the staff is responsible for, as far as making sure that if they're putting links or they're updating information, that they have vetted those, that those are appropriate, they're responsible for that, that you have approved those for students to look at, that you're taking ownership for that on the various locations. And then the biggest part of both these is toward the end of, now that we are in this world of artificial intelligence, and how do we handle that in the classroom? How are we supposed to handle that as a staff? And that is the bulk of the end of both of these policies, where it's almost 2 pages of green language talking about the use of AI and how we are to use that appropriately as teachers, and how we are to expect our students to use that appropriately as well. Mr. Wesley was on top of this early. And he had worked through this with Norm. They had a lot of conversation about acronyms that I don't understand, but they have gone through these, and we are going to move quick on these to make sure that we include these in our updates at the start of next school year, as far as expectations for our staff and students, to make sure we're using these tools in an appropriate manner. It's similar, I think, of back in the day when we first started allowing cell phones to pop up. And it was concerns about, if we allow these students to have cell phones, how are they going to use them? Are they going to use them appropriately or inappropriately? Are we going to allow them to do Google searches? And so it's just this continuing involvement around technology that we're just trying to keep up with.
On that note, I would like to mention that I'm not comfortable with the AI use for our students. Number one, we know that it is politically biased. And we cannot also guarantee that our students are not using it to write their own assignments and write their reports. So I think until we can work out the bugs of politically word I'm looking for, but until a political bias, then I don't think it's known that they are saying that Republican men are bad. And I have an article right here that says, Chat GPT's liberal bias allow hate speech towards GOP. And so I think until we can establish that it's not biased, because whoever programs this AI can put their political bias in there. So.
Mr. Vogelman or Mr. Wesley, would you like to address that?
Yeah, I'm fine addressing it. So number one, I do agree that we have to be very careful with any source of information. And I know our teachers, our curriculum department take that very seriously as far as the source of the information. I also know there's a variety of AIs being developed. Some are being developed specifically to address that question, which excites me. I want facts. I want to have facts. I think we all do.
Yeah.
Any kind of bias, I think needs to be part of the learning process as this moves forward, not only for our kids, but for all of us. It's going to have a huge impact. So I think that's already kind of baked in as we move forward to our filters and looking at this. As far as determining student work versus AI creation, we look at that similar to plagiarism that has taken place over the last 50 or so years, particularly when it comes to digital plagiarism. So we're actually working with our curriculum team to explore options for our teachers for next year, that when students turn things in, it can automatically get assessed versus plagiarism, AI creation, that sort of thing, and give the teacher information to accurately assess if that work was created by AI, plagiarism, or the student itself. One of the tools we already have in place has already added a feature that we're looking at right now. But we hope to expand something district-wide, because we also see that as it's an undertaking of education, the creation, the demonstration, learning, and we want that to be natural and active.
I've also seen reports that the AI are able to reproduce their own thoughts and start. I just remember glancing across the article, but how are we ensuring? I guess you have processes in place just to ensure that what is coming from the AI is accurate. So you just stated that. Okay.
Yeah, actually,
Thank you.
you know, I look at AI no different than the rest of the internet.
Yeah.
It's a source of information, and one of our roles is to educate kids and staff in assessing the truth of information. And so getting secondary sources, getting verification in different ways, running it through detection tools like I'm referencing. Absolutely, we don't want anyone to have 100% trust in any source.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Anything further? Mr. Vogelman, anything further?
Nope, like I said, Mr. Wesley's on top of it.
Great, thank you. 8300,
Continuity of organization operations plans. This just deals with how we will continue to move forward in the event of a issue, disaster, emergency. Just adding language now that, you know, we have to add in here the term cyber attacks. Back in 2017, when this was passed, that wasn't necessarily a thing. So it's adding in that language as well, but then also just kind of updating, making sure we're current here in 2023. Not too much on this one.
any questions? 8305, please.
Similar updating language. This hasn't been updated since 2017. So it's just updating data in there, not just information. We talk about data as well, and just talk about how it relates to guidelines and expectations with vendors as well. Just some cleanup language, nothing new is passing or new laws or anything. It's just updating language to reflect 2023.
That cleanup of language also includes removing him and her.
Any further comments? 8315,
Information management, once again, talking about as we continue to expand on this, where some of that information that we hold and records retention and who has access to it, making sure how we are taking care of all this. If you look at, when you talk about, you know, what does this include now? As you think about all the things that have changed, and if you look on, like for that second page in the middle there, that's basically everything that is new in the world since this policy was first passed that we have to include now. So that's news groups, that's PDF files, that's JPEG files, that's electronic calendar appointments, that's emails, that's videos, that's everything, making sure that we are covering everything that we need to manage, that Todd's team has oversight of and manages that data. So if someone has record requests or people want their data back to them, that's how it's managed and taken care of.
questions or comments? 9700.01,
This one should be the last one in the group. Kind of goes to language, just talking about if there's an outside vendor that we link to, that we it's not necessarily feasible for us to understand what that vendor may have on their website as well. And just ensuring that, understand that if we have a link on our site and you go to that person's website, that if they have something inappropriate on their site, it's not necessarily possible for us to watch for that and understand those guidelines that may apply to someone else's website.
any questions? Rob, I'm showing 3 minutes left. Can you get through this last section?
You better believe it, because the last section is all about tobacco use. And I basically was gonna tell you, if you, there are 6 of these here. In the first 5, 1615, 3215, 4215, 5512, and 7434, they're all identical. It's just once again, the 1000s is for administration, 3000 for classified, 4000 for certified, 5000 for students, and 7,000 just for general use. And it basically is just updating. When we say the term tobacco, this is what it means. And now we have to include e-cigarettes. We have to talk about Juuls. We have to talk about vape pens, hookahs, all these things that are now listed under USDA for considered to be a tobacco product. So someone can say, well, it's not tobacco, it's a vape pen. Well, that counts. And so the one, if you look through them, and you won't be able to tell the difference between those first 5 other than the numbers. They are word for word identical, because they all address the same thing, just in a different section of policy based on who it applies to.
Any questions on that?
That was pretty easy to understand.
All right, Mr. Volgeman, your intent is to put this on for a first read at the June 5th meeting?
Yes, I just to cover then the last one, 9160. I told you the first 5 are all the same. The last one, 9160. It's not the same as those 5, but the update is the same. It's just expanding. When we use the term use of tobacco, it goes into e-cigarettes, all that good stuff. So that's why 9160 is a little different. Just says if you attend a public event that you are that you're going to follow those rules, and we're going to be tobacco-free facility, site, district. So yes, that would be my intention to put these all up for first read. I know there's 2 that were noted that I need to get clarifications on, a couple of paragraphs here and there.
So anyone who has comments, questions, or concerns, please let Mr. Volkman know before our next board meeting. And Mr. Volkman, if you let us know what those questions and comments are, so that we're all aware of what the concerns might be.
Sure.
Mr. Volgeman and Mr. Wesley, thank you very much. As our resident experts on policy and technology, appreciate the input.
Ma'am.
I know that there was, many of you may be here for the discussion that we had on the agenda for the board member motion for Title IX. Unfortunately, we have a noticed meeting that starts at 10 o'clock, and so we will have to postpone that until our next meeting. And I apologize if that's any inconvenience to anyone.
I'm
Thanks,
sure
everybody,
you're
for coming out.
apologetic for that.
I will adjourn this committee meeting.